afternoon, everyone in India who's logging into our latest episode of the IDEX Legal and Pvt Ltd Tech Talk webinar. This is episode 5 of the collaboration that we've been doing. It's a monthly series where we invite a leading general counsel to come and discuss the world of legal technology from the in-house perspective. And joining the general counsel of the month, we have Shashwat Sikka, who's co-founder of Pvt Ltd. To date, we have covered the following discussions: the role of technology in future-proofing your department, the evolution of technology tools for the in-house counsel, legal tech and the banking and finance industry, legal tech journey, understanding the process of building a tech roadmap as an in-house counsel. If you'd like to view any of these sessions, then you can see them on our IDEX Legal YouTube channel. And today we discuss contract legal management tools and the legal department with a core focus on strategies for adopting the right contract management tool for your business. Joining us for this discussion, we're privileged to have Amit from Marico. Amit recently joined Marico Limited as Executive Vice President and Legal Head. He's part of the Executive Committee of Marico and is responsible for all the legal affairs and corporate affairs for the group. Prior to joining Marico, Amit was with Hindustan Unilever as GM Legal and Corporate Secretarial. He has over 18 years experience in corporate legal business partnering, corporate compliances and governance, and has worked across many organizations in the consumer sector. And we're delighted to have him on board to discuss CLM strategies. Alongside Amit, we have Shashwat Sikka, co-founder of Pvt Ltd. Shashwat is a co-founder at Pvt Ltd and a graduate from IIT Kharagpur. He loves engaging with people, problem solving, and being a catalyst for building new products and businesses. Prior to founding Pvt Ltd, he was an early employee at Oreo, where he was instrumental in building new verticals from scratch. With Pvt Ltd, he aims to build technology that transforms legal operations for enterprises. And Pvt Ltd, as many of you probably know now, is a new age legal operations management suite for enterprises, providing a single integrated SaaS platform for legal teams to manage all aspects of legal operations, including litigation, contracts, compliance, and IP, with customized workflows and analytics, and is currently trusted by over 200 companies and 100 law firms, which is incredible because when we started the series, there were under 150 companies. So they've grown so far in the last few months. Welcome, gentlemen, and let's start dissecting the CLM conundrum. So Amit and Shashwat, if you'd like to join us. Great, welcome on board, and an exciting topic, which is a big challenge for a lot of corporate counsel and businesses. So Amit, first to you. As a GC, what does the whole concept of CLM mean to you? And what are you looking for it to do for the department?
Thanks, first of all, Vikas, for inviting me for a very different kind of a conversation, which is on tech on legal. Generally, we get opportunity to talk on hardcore legal subjects, but it's a pleasure to be here and talk about what will be the future, possibly from a legal function point of view, because I think technology is something which is changing the game everywhere, and I think legal field is no exception here. So I'm delighted to be part of this conversation. Coming to, I think, a contract management tool, that's when you talk of the tech tools, possibly some of the basic tools to start with are, of course, contract management tools. For me, I see it much beyond a simple legal tech solution. For me, contract management tool has to be a business solution. It cannot be a legal solution only. And it is something which has to not only solve a legal problem, but a business problem. It has to become an add-on for a supply chain for them to identify where they are having more reliance on particular vendors, or which are the vendors where they may have a concentration. It has to become a control measure for a finance function as well. And from a legal point of view, I see it as a very strong risk management tool. I see it as a very strong governance tool. So it has to solve a business problem for me, rather than just becoming a a document management system. So that's how I really see a contract management tool. It has to really get inbuilt into the fabric of the way a company is doing the business and start adding value to my whole governance and risk management framework.
Great. And how early has that thinking been? Because, like you were mentioning at the beginning, normally, GCs they speak about the legal function and the legal challenges. It's normally been quite a narrow field of kind of a view for GCs, and now we're seeing more and more GCs looking at wider perspectives of what's impacting the business. So when did that kind of thinking start for you about, okay, we need to use tech to solve some of these problems?
So I think in my mind, the tech in legal has traveled a journey, right? The way I have seen in last few years, right? There was a time when there were no legal tools which were available in the market for legal per se. And what used to happen was either companies used to pick up an in-house tool and say, give me a document management system or give me a workflow-based system, and I will try to use it for legal. So there was no customized legal system which was available. Then came an era where things like ProVakil came in, which bring very expertise, understanding of legal, and then provided solutions which were customized for legal. So there is some understanding and more customized tool started coming in. And I think now we are living in a phase where now we have to kind of move from what I call it as a gold standard in tech interventions, right? So if somebody needs a contract-based solution, we'll have to reach to a level where one can say with some degree of certainty that this is the gold standard. We are still on the journey that we have not reached there, right? And this whole conversation of why the gold standard is required is because it's a learning curve that has happened from a simple document management system to a value-adding system where it should start solving business problems. That's the journey the legal function has really traveled, right? And that's where the change in the thinking has happened. We have deployed tools and we have understood why some of the tools have not worked, right? And the realization was that unless it is solving a larger business problem, unless you are making it fundamental to your processes of the company, it is not going to work. You can pick up a tool, you can say it's a legal intervention and hence I am bringing it. It becomes a legal intervention only. It will never be sustainable. And therefore, I say that if you need a long-term solution and long-term tech solution, it has to get into the fabric of the company processes. It has to solve a larger business problem than only a legal problem. So I think that evaluation has happened with learnings, failing, and I think now I'm sure that most legal counsels have realized that unless a legal intervention is something which you are able to pass muster through your larger business ecosystem, it may fail.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And I think, obviously Shashwat will know a lot about this as well because he's been working with so many corporates. But I think it's that whole journey that I know when at IDEX Legal, we started working with GCs before there were even GCs, actually, like 12 years ago. And the whole kind of story was, we want a seat at the table, we want to be taken seriously. And now, now that you see them becoming, part of the business, and I think we've seen in recent years that evolution that, okay, we're not just siloed into looking after legal, we are part of the business. And, and it's really interesting to hear your kind of viewpoint about how do we use tech to solve not just my legal problem, but the business problem. And I think it's a symbol of the kind of journey and the evolution of the GC as well. Just going back to, the CLM, conundrum in particular, and I know you spent, many years trying to figure out, the contract management, strategy for, when you're at Unilever, now at Marico. What are some of those key markers, you look at, when deciding whether it's appropriate and also the right time to adopt a CLM within the business? Yeah.
And I think you answered it somewhere in your question itself when you say what's the right time, right? It is the first thing is whether the organization is matured enough to bring that system on board, and whether the timing is right, and whether you have that critical mass, which is where I can say that now it has that mass where it will solve that business problem, right? So I think from a timing point of view, of course, you have to see the fitment for your company. What is the need of your company? And I think at some stage also to say that what is the legal overall transformation journey that is happening from a tech point of view in the organization, and try to build in over here. So if you have a critical mass of contracts, if there are control gaps which you clearly see, it's the right time to deploy that kind of a legal intervention, a tech intervention which can solve for it. I think again, I think maturity of your IT systems also play a role, right? What kind of a systems you are already using in the company, and whether the system that you are proposing is going to work in tandem with those IT systems or not. So I think some are those questions which you keep in mind when you try to deploy a CLM tool. What is that? Again, I repeat myself, that what is the business problem that this is going to solve, and whether from a pure business point of view, I still say that whether it is giving you the ROI or not. That question will always come and keep on coming, that whether any intervention is going to give me the return on investment that I am putting on table. And that return on investment, as I said, need not necessarily be a finance return of investment. It can be a control return of investment. It could be a governance return of investment, but it should serve that purpose for which I'm deploying it.
Yeah, I think it's a great point here as well, that the GC has to keep thinking much beyond its original scope. Shashwat, let's bring you in on that point, because obviously you work with hundreds of corporates now, and of all different sizes. Amit's trajectory has, he's at the larger, the large cap company, so he's got that privilege of working in mature businesses where they'll have sophisticated tools, teams, IT departments, etc. So, but you will work from smaller companies, medium ones, as well as large corporates, like the Maricos and the Unilevers. So what kind of markers do you see that, for a department, for the GC or the in-house legal to start thinking about, okay, now is the right time for us to be thinking about the CLM and deploying the CLM?
Yeah, no, so, I mean, Amit covered it, right? I mean, but again, I want to take a slightly different slightly different approach to answering this, right? I mean, and probably talk about a little a few things which are which we have noticed in the last 2-3 years, right? So while again, I mean, especially in terms of legal tech, right? If you look at the overall legal department, the kind of tools that are required in a department, contracts and compliance, I would say, are definitely two tools where it's not just the legal function, right? It's pretty much an organization-wide implementation. It is very cross-functional. So readiness has to be evaluated, right? I mean, and there are lots of markers, right? I mean, the markers could be, speed, right? I mean, if business is not able to deliver on targets because the legal processes which have to be which have to take place in that course are slowing it down, that is a strong marker that you need a system to run this, right? If there are compliance misses that are happening with regards to your contractual obligations, that is a big, right? I mean, we see so many companies where you are operating with vendors where the contract is already expired, and somebody, I mean, it happens with us, right? I mean, we work with large corporates, and the work order was still X date, and we are still a startup, so there are a lot of misses that happen at our end. But those companies realize that we've been making payments without a work order for the last 6 months, and now they'll go and create a backdated work order. So again, these are all control issues which goes through your finance function, procurement function, and it is not purely just legal, right? So there are lots of these markers, and again, and Amit mostly touched upon some of those areas, right? But again, one thing that I want to talk about, right? I mean, and this is how technology works, right? I mean, there are a lot of unintended consequences of technology, right? So when you think about a contract management solution, right? I mean, it's typically something that a larger, a company with a decent scale and size should think about, because it requires a lot of resources, planning, implementation. If you're a very young company, then it will slow down things for you, right? It is not going to make it faster. For a large company, it is going to make things faster, but for a young company, if you plan to implement the same system that a Marico is implementing, it is going to slow things down considerably for you, right? Because I mean, Marico operates at a very different size and scale, and there are so many controls and governance that needs to be taken into consideration, right? But what has happened, right? So companies like us have been working in this field. In fact, there have been people before us who've been working in this field, right? But So when you start working on tools, right? I mean, so today we have customers for a CLM product where, you have large conglomerates with multiple group, company structures within a group, but we also have really small SMBs who use this product, right? Now that's an unintended consequence, right? Because the use case for an SMB is very, very different from a use case for a large enterprise, right? A large enterprise is using the CLM product for very different problem statement. And an SMB, a mom and pop store, right, today can use a CLM product. They're using ERP products also, by the way, too, right? I mean, nobody would have thought that an SMB would use an ERP, right? So these are the unintended consequences, right? And that's how generally technology works, right? You figure out, okay, this is what we are trying to solve for. And then you start working on those problems, and then you start realizing there are other things that can be done using the same technology, which you hadn't thought of when you start building, right? So for instance, a good example, right? I keep taking that example, is a business like Uber could not have been built, right? Let's say 10 years back, 15 years back, right? Because they do when Uber was scaling, right? They were launching their business in 25, 30 countries, right? There were people who would land in a particular month. There were people who would land in a country, right? New jurisdiction, new laws, everything is different. And they would onboard millions of cabs globally in different currencies, different pricing structures, different, price controls, right? How did that happen? How did those contracts happen? That is because, again, innovations like CLM, right? I mean, they had the technology in place so that they could do this overnight, right? A lot of small businesses, right? Today, a Swiggy, Zomato, the reason they can onboard so many restaurants, right, overnight is because their contracts are standardized, right? They're able to do this. And this is not how most CLM tools were built for, the Johnson & Johnsons of the world and the Vodafone and the Airtels of the world, which had massive businesses, big supply chain issues and all of those things. But then you also came upon, the technology was apt for, young, fast growing businesses to sort of explore, right? So very different pointers at different, I would say, time horizon in a company's growth, right, journey, right? But in the more formal context, the CLM product, I think, is way better suited for a large enterprise because you need a lot of resources, you need a lot of planning, right? And it can, as Amit mentioned, right? I mean, in my view, it is much, the use case is much larger of a risk management tool than of anything else, right? I mean, for a general counsel, if you're in control of all the contracts that you have, right? I mean, there's a cliche, right? A company is the sum of its contracts, right? Every arrangement that a company, what is a company, right? End of the day, it is all contracts, employee contracts, vendor contracts, sales contracts, and so on and so forth, right? So if you can really decode the contracts and make them work for you, you can manage risks, you can grow business faster, right? So yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's a long winding way to answer your question. I don't know if it made sense, but that is my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, well,
I just want to add to a point which Shashwat made, possibly to give him a new business model, right? So Shashwat, you talked about a CLM tool for smaller companies and for larger companies. I just want to say this, that in last 2 years, this concept has changed, right? Today, there's a bigger company which is doing more innovative, smaller businesses as well. And right, for me, it is no more like either or. Right, it is both. It is a bigger as well, and it is a smaller as well. So there may be a part of business which wants a much more agility, quicker CLM solutions, and there is then those conventional businesses which are okay for a conventional CLM model, right? So I think for you now, you have to start thinking that how can you provide a model which can kind of quickly customize to a conventional one and to a more agile business as well, because gone are the days where a company is only doing conventional and more big companies. Bigger companies are also innovating. There are parts of the business which are as agile as any startup, right? So I think I'm just throwing this new challenge on you to think about it, to build a solution which serves for both.
Absolutely, Amit. And I mean, we want to sell to Beardo as well, right? Not just Marico, right? I mean,
absolutely.
All the D2C brands who are eventually going to land up in the Marico basket, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, we are very, very aware of how the market is changing really fast. And I mean, that's what end of the day innovation is, right? I mean, if we are able to catch that pulse of the market, we will be able to, build something which makes value. But otherwise, Businesses move really fast these days.
Well, I think overall a great point in terms of, make sure you have the right tool for the business that you're in and the kind of where you are right now, because like you said, Shashwat, you could end up with the wrong tool for where you are as a business. You could be more at the kind of small, medium size, and you end up getting a very rigid CLM tool in and it doesn't work. And then you kind of go anti that kind of thing that, oh, this CLM doesn't work, so let's go back to whatever the other process was. And it's about getting the right tool.
We have a small saying, sorry to cut you in there, right? We have a small saying in our companies, there are no bad products, they're just bad implementation, right? So, I mean, if you implement it poorly in the sense that you're taking an enterprise tool and give it to a small, young organization, it's a horror story, right? I mean, it's never going to work out.
Well, there you go. Vendor caveat there. Vendor caveat. Which leads us on nicely to the next point that, okay, so we've decided the business rationale for adopting the CLM. It's the right time, right product, etc. Amit, what's the next step in that whole process of then onboarding the CLM system?
Of course, once you have fundamentally decided that now my business needs a CLM, there is a clear business case which has been made out, to have a solution like this. That starts the journey of first designing what are the various things that you want, which I say as must-haves for your solution, which are non-negotiable. Typically, the way I have went about doing it, creating a smaller group which has expertise from legal, which has expertise from IT, which has expertise from finance, so which are key stakeholders for a selection. I think you make a small group who can really evaluate and put the business requirements for the business case very, very clearly. I think then it starts the process of looking what the market is like, which are the best in class tools in market, which are the ones which are really solving your problem and at least ticking most of the box of what you call it as must-haves, right? And then of course you test them out, you try them out. There are conversations with people like Shashwat to really tell our requirement. At times we kind of put our weight through to say this is what we need for sure, right? Few he agrees, few he rejects, but that's how the conversation goes. And I think then you reach a point where you have to make the final selection between one or two best in class tools which are really checking most of the boxes for you. Then typically you do some kind of a pilot run with them and then go to implementation phase. So that's in very, very brief how, in my mind, the implementation of something like this goes. Of course, there are IT solution, IT evaluations that happens, finance evaluation that happens. You will have to see the fitment with your existing systems, as I said earlier, that whether this tool, if implemented, will be able to talk to other systems in the organization or not. It cannot be a standalone system. There has to be some amount of compatibility. So some of those things that you definitely check from a initial kind of evaluation point of view, and that's how you go ahead into the journey.
Yeah, and I think again, very, very good points in terms of what in-house counsel should look at, and you also mentioned the kind of the must-haves and the nice-haves, right? And it's very easy, like when you're there and saying, oh, we're buying a new tech tool and it's going to do all this stuff for us, and you can get swayed at some level by the kind of jazziness and then, oh, a new toy to bring in and it's going to solve so many problems, and then you realize, like most of us have that kind of thing. We've got Office and we've got all these sophisticated things from Windows and Google now, but 90% of it we don't use. So from your experience now, what are the bits that you're an in-house counsel, you're trying to solve the business problem. So what are the bits that you say that this is the must-have that the CLM should provide, and this is really nice to have, but not necessarily critical to to the solving the business problem you have right now?
So again, I think there cannot be one right answer for this, because for the simple reason that the business problem may be very different. As Shashwat has also said, the reason for onboarding a CLM tool for an organization may be very, very different from what I am looking at, right? I may be purely looking at it as a control measure. Somebody may be looking at it purely as a document management system. Some may be looking at it from a knowledge management point of view. Some may be looking at it from a pure finance point of view. So I think some of the must-haves will change depending on what problem you are trying to solve, is what my view is. But again, few things from the experiences. where do you want the data to be stored? It's as simple as where the conversation start, because contracts are critical, they are confidential in nature. Where do you want to host that data? Whether it has to be, are you okay to be on the third-party server, whether you want it to be on your server? What is the kind of storage capacity we are looking at, right? Do you need a mobile compatibility on that or not? Do you want a scanning facility? Because a lot of these things actually go from a scanner to the system. Do you want that kind of a thing? What is the kind of user base you are looking for? Do you want to integrate it with a digital signature kind of a platform as well? So some of those are basic stuff which you really look at. But again, as I said, there cannot be one fit formula for it. It really depends on what is the business or need that you are trying to solve. I think Shashwat can possibly give a better answer for this based on his experience. What are the few things that he has definitely kind of seen clients asking for? But I have in my mind just articulated a few which we have placed on the top.
Yeah, it'd be good. We'll go over to you, Shashwat, in terms of, you've worked with so many clients now, so you'll know that there are some clients that want everything because they just think, oh, it's great to have everything, and then, and obviously you'll know, of other vendors that will try and sell everything because for them, it's about selling the whole tool and the whole package. But just from your kind of experience, like what Amit was saying, obviously it depends what is your actual business problem you're trying to solve, as a client. But what are, from your experience, these are the must-have you must have essentially, for your CLM tool to provide at least a basic level of functionality. And all this stuff is really nice, but it's only because you're a large corporate and you need this stuff, and you don't really, these are the nice have you can basically cast away for the time being.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wanted to add something to the previous question that you had asked, Amit, but again, I'll let that go in the interest of time. But yeah, this is a fairly serious question, and I want to bring in a sort of tech vendors perspective here, right? If you're a software product, how are you thinking about it, right? So, see, the advantage that we have is that we are not thinking about one business or one industry, or we, by nature of what we are building, right? I mean, we have to have a long decadal view on what should be the state, right, going forward, right? I mean, where do we imagine how is contracting happening? Let's say 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what are the technologies that are available, right? So our bet on how we develop our product, right? I mean, some of those decisions are made that way. And then you obviously understand, work with client requirements and so. So if I have to boil it down to one trend and one thing that I have really understood about, and again, this is in the context of mid-size and large companies, one key thing that a CLM product has to do, otherwise it will not have longevity, right? If I have to talk about just one thing, right? Then for the legal function, a good CLM is one which eliminates the use of Microsoft Word. In our opinion, the cause of all the mess that contracts are, right? And again, kudos to Microsoft for creating such a great product, right? But unfortunately, it has come to a point where, because of what happens inside the document, right, there's so much that goes on within the document, right? There's so much back and forth between lawyers, in-house teams, third parties, right, and business, and people are commenting, they're deleting, they're adding, so much information, right? See, everybody can build you the workflow tool where somebody places a request, somebody approves it. All of those things are simple, right? But the real meat of the work happens in the document. What happens is, in most tools, the document is separate and the rest of the tool is separate, right? So then whatever is happening in the document, I have to manually sit and code it in the product. Otherwise, none of the other teams can access the data, right? It is all, those versions that are sitting inside email inboxes, like 50 thread long email inboxes. That is the real challenge that contracting, right? Again, I'm talking from a legal functions perspective, right? If a tool is able to eliminate that, right? If it able to replicate that experience inside the tool using technology, if that is solved, right, then you are building a product that will last you decades, right? I mean, then you can talk about machine learning and artificial intelligence and all of those things. All of that can happen only when your document and in-document workflows are solved, right? Until that point, it is just a workflow management product, right? Which could be really valuable for a lot of businesses, but it is not going to have longevity, right? It is probably going to be valuable to you in the next 2 years, 3 years, probably 5 years time frame, right? But in 5 years, the world will evolve to using AI driven contracts, right? I mean, and then if you have to lay down the plumbing again, it is going to be hard work, right? So, I mean, our take is that, and one of the things that we are doing with our product, right, is we are building a native legal document editor, right? So powering the entire collaboration between multiple users, internal stakeholders, and external stakeholders through a native document editor, right? Which can help you configure your templates, can help you manage deviations on those templates, right? Collaborate, comment, approve, reject, and all of that metadata gets captured in the system that is then available through APIs to other products, whether it is your procurement, finance, other functions, right? And then as a risk management function, you have a very clear understanding. Okay, 2 years back, we signed a contract with XYZ company, right? What are the vulnerabilities in that contract, right? Because all that effort that was done today over Microsoft Word and email, right? Threads, those are the vulnerabilities, right? And they are not captured, right? In most products, right? So that I think is one of the, if I have to talk about one thing, right? There are number of things, right, that a product should get right, right? It has to have APIs, it has to integrate to other internal tools and systems, right? It has to have configurable workflows, reporting, right? It has to have a searchable repository, right? Those things are a given, right? Anybody building contracts today as a tech product understands that, right? But editor is one of the most, I mean, Microsoft has been building that product for 50 years. So you have to compete with technology that has been around by a dominant player for 50 years, right? I mean, the most used product by lawyers is Microsoft Word, period, right? And if you're building, people who are really taking a shot at building CLM for the ages, they're trying to eliminate Microsoft Word out of the equation, right? If you're able to do that, then the future can be really, really exciting. But till that point, it is going to be limited, right? It will have its value, right? I'm not saying that it will have no value, but that is our take, right? That is one key take that we as a company have taken. And 50%, more than 50% of our resources on our contract management development side, right? Our roadmap for the next 3, 5, 10 years is on the editor, right? So we want to have the gold standard for legal document editing, right? Then if you solve that, then it really, really creates a lot of value for the business. Again, that's our take.
Phenomenal. I think it's a great point to kind of mention as well, because obviously, you can provide the kind of tech specific, what are the key ones, and the challenge to overcome, like you said, we're all used to using, Microsoft Word for all our work. And I know your whole thing about email chains and that, and trying to remember where is this stuff located, because you can't find it after a while. One of the other things, Amit, from your experience, obviously you've decided, okay, there's a rationale for the CLM. We're going to onboard, we're going to go procure one, do the onboarding process. But just from your experience, what are some of the pitfalls to avoid when actually then going through the vendor selection process, right? And you mentioned that the challenge we have in India specifically right now is that it's still a very, very new industry, like legal tech, and it's not like the Americas, for example, where or UK, where you've got tech providers who've been there for a long time, and it's quite easy to figure out who are the best in the market, what's the gold standard, like you mentioned, and that's a challenge GCs have in India. So what's your advice, to your peers on, what are the pitfalls to avoid when bringing vendors on board?
Yeah, I think the first one is that, which I possibly said in a different words earlier, that what is working for someone else may not really work for you, right? And hence simply picking up something because it is being successful with your peers or some other companies may not always be the right strategy. It's a good reference point, by the way. Everyone goes and talks to the colleagues and in other companies and try to figure out which are the best in class tools. But I think one of the common mistake people also do is saying, okay, let's just simply pick it up because other companies are doing it. Let me just deploy it without really understanding whether it will work it or not. So I think that is the biggest thing in my mind. The other one, which again I talked about earlier, is compatibility with your existing processes and the tools that you are using, right? If you have not done that evaluation, I can say with some degree of certainty that the tech intervention is going to fail, right? Because then it will be a standalone intervention, which is not kind of able to collaborate with your other system. It is not getting into the processes which your company is being used to follow, right? So those are two things I will definitely call out, that it is not one fit formula. It is not about just going and picking it in the market and deploying it. If you really want it to be successful, you have to figure out what will work for your company and do some amount of customization. The good part is that now there are vendors who are ready to listen and ready to customize. There were times when, you know, it was just like, you know, you have this in the market, take it or leave it. Right now at least we have moved that path where there is an amount of customization which is now available. So that is important, and therefore it builds on the second point, that bring in something which will be able to then collaborate with the existing systems well. So I think those are possibly two areas I will definitely say that watch out for. Otherwise, after doing all the work, you realize yourself in a situation that you have taken a product which is actually not working out. It just becomes then a good project to have, and it eventually then dies its natural death.
Yeah, which I think is, you know, the bane of a lot of tech projects that come on board.
Yeah.
You know, there's many of them, and then you kind of get like, I think what Shashwat was mentioning earlier, you end up blaming the tech rather than understanding.
Yep.
You've got your own evaluation wrong.
I'm sorry, I want to just add a point there. I mean, there's some. I want to give credit because we've worked with Amit twice now. We've worked in two companies, right? And the last process that we ran with Amit's team, right? That was one of the most well-run processes, right? I mean, we as tech vendors can't be happier, right? I mean, and we ended up doing a lot of work there, right? And it wasn't an easy deployment at all. But I'm quite certain that it is going to be a while before that company even thinks about replacing that product, right? Because that much thought has gone into that product implementation, right? I mean, that's a mistake most companies make. A lot of legal departments, because the legal functions are nascent, right? I mean, legal ops is a new concept coming in, right? So one mistake that a lot of legal functions make is they don't consult widely within the organization, right? There's so many times that we've done things which have been detrimental to our business. By a deal that was about to close, we brought in more complexity in the deal by telling the legal function that you are missing this point and this team needs to be involved. And then that team had some other priorities, so it never took off for us, right? But we could have easily sold to legal and made our money, but we knew that it was not going to work out in the long run, because we're going to put in the effort, we're going to put in the hard yard, and then eventually some function, and we've learned it the hard way, right? I mean, earlier we had done deployments in banks where we did it for the legal function, and the collection function came and said, none of this works for us, because we have our own parallel set of systems, and legal, who has more dominance then, right? I mean, and then the CFO will walk in and say, okay, I am not getting my dashboard. Every CLM product needs to have a CFO dashboard, right? I mean, if the CFO and the general counsel are not on the same page, you are in for a surprise, right? Because you will do everything, right? But eventually they will walk in, right? I mean, and so companies that realize that and make that process inclusive and consultative, right? I mean, that is what is going to work out in the long run. But CLM specifically, right? You can have a litigation tool which is purely legal oriented, right? Not all companies require board level reporting on litigation and things like that, right? But for contracts, at least, I believe it's not just the legal function. It is sales, it is procurement, it is finance, right? And and I mean, if you're a large company, hire an expert for you to run that process. If your IT function runs that process, great. But if not, then at times, I mean, CLM especially is a part of a lot of companies' financial and sort of transformation roadmap today, right? So it is part of other things that is happening in the company, not just something that happens in isolation. So if there is a consultant working with you on the financial transformation roadmap, generally that's a great idea, because they will then research the market. They will tell you this product has this, what are the pros, what are the cons, right? Because see, and again, one other truth about legal function is that they are overworked, right? Every legal function that we have worked with has been working. I mean, they're understaffed and overworked, right? So they will have a very small window of time to give to that, right? But when your IT is involved, when other stakeholders are involved, then enough time goes into that implementation also, right? So before we start having legal operations as a non-lawyers working within the legal function, trying to run organizational efficiencies, right? Till that point is realized in India, at least try to have more consultation in the process is what I believe, because that's going to be very, very key, right, for the longevity of the project.
Yeah, I think you hit a point with Amit there when you said, overworked, understaffed. So he's trying to hide his smile there, because I think we all recognize the challenge of GCs, and especially in the work from home pandemic era, because it's 24/7 GC at the moment. But a good point, because normally we put all the focus on, the challenge with the vendor, right? And, how the vendor bit goes wrong. But actually, it's great to hear the point from the vendor's point of view that, look, as a client, you need to get all this in order before the vendor should come in. Because if you haven't got these strong foundations, your deployment is not going to work effectively, and you're going to throw the tool out, and it's just going to be it's going to be a project, like one of those white elephant projects that money spent and not deployed, and we're not going there again. So I think it's good advice for the client to do that thinking up front as well. The next bit then, so we've got you've got the vendor, you've got the CLM, and sometimes a lot of people think, right, job done, that's it. Now the easy bit is running the tool and running the business and seeing the efficiency. But I mean, I know you'll know, and Shashwat will know from his experience, that is not the hard bit done. So the hard bit is actually getting the tool to work for not just the department, but for the business. So that whole concept of adoption and acceptance. So what are the challenges that I know because at Unilever you were part of that whole digital transformation work that they did, and obviously you're running that at Marico now. So what are the challenges that need to be overcome to get the tool to be accepted and adopted effectively across the business?
To my mind, I think that's the most important stage of legal tech intervention, right? All what we have talked about is still easier one, because you will do stakeholder consultation, you will be able to get a tool, but the people who are ultimately going to use it, if they don't adopt it, and you are talking of a cultural shift because the set of people was doing the same process in a certain way over years and years again, they've got used to it, right? One of the rules which Shashwat talked about, we have done this extensive work. One of the rule we applied it, try to keep your legal tool as close as possible to the existing process, right? So that the acceptability is more. If you try to suddenly change and bring a new process, some amount of change will definitely happen. But if you build over that culture which is there in the company over a period of time, the acceptability is better, right? I think I just want to add a point on the pitfalls. I think one of the mistakes as lawyers we do is when we deploy legal tech, it has two parts, the legal and tech, right? And we are expert only in legal. Lawyers should not start thinking that they are expert in tech as well. And that is another mistake which happens when you start thinking I am a tech expert as well. It is always advisable to get a tech expert on the table. You cannot provide the expertise, or you cannot take a calls on the tech area, because to be honest, that's not our expertise. I'm sure there will be a few lawyers who will have the expertise. We understand tech, but you are not holding an expertise like nobody else is holding an expertise on legal. I'm not holding expertise in tech, and therefore it's important to have that that right kind of a mix on the table. Coming to the, I think, cultural shift part of it, you first need to really land it well, that this is something which is going to solve a problem. It is like a solution that you are providing to your internal customer, saying, hey, listen, you were doing a particular job in a certain way, it was taking X amount of your time, this were the problems, here is a solution which is going to kind of eliminate those problems and at least solve those problems to a certain extent. And you have to really then kind of decide a cutoff kind of a thing to say that from this date as well, this is how the migration is going to happen. Managing that migration at that period is very critical. There has to be a team which has to watch that migration very closely. There has to be a support system that has to be provided. There has to be a hand-holding that has to be done so that there are no transition laws that are happening in the process, right? So I think that's very important. The other thing which is very important is keeping your eyes and ears close to the ground. When I say this, I mean the people who are using it. What is the feedback? What are they exactly saying after using the tool, right? So 2, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months after deployment, you have to listen to that. That what is the experience? Has it really solved the problem? You went and made a promise that it is going to solve a problem. Has it really solved the problem? Is it created more complexity in the system? What exactly is happening? And it is the users who will tell you that this is fine, but these are additional things that we need, or these are the additional problems because of the deployment we are facing. And I think you should be open at that time to hear that feedback and modify the system accordingly. It is not about saying I have just deployed it, now I am so rigid that I will not make any change, irrespective of the kind of issues it is causing in the organization. I think a tech deployment, it is always a learning process. You will never get it 100% right. You may get it 80% right. You should be flexible with the 10% to say, I will listen to the feedback and then modify it. At the end of the day, it is a service to my mind, which you are providing to the larger organization. It has to lead to a consumer delight. A customer who is using it has to say, wow, this is the tech tool I was looking at. Now it is saving my time. Now it is making my life simpler. Now it is making my risk management better. If that happens, when the wow comes, the acceptability automatically goes down. If the wow is not there, if there is a source of displeasure, source of anxiety for the people who are using it, create more stress for them, sooner or later the system is going to die. I have seen people then moving back to the old system, right? Because it was not either solving the problem or it was creating more. It was, as Shashwat rightly said, it's not only a legal function. Everywhere people have shortage of time. So if the usage of the tool started taking more of my time, I will go back to my old system. It's a normal human behavior, right? So that happens very much, because you will create some buzz, you will deploy it, you will do that all for initial 5 to 6 months. People will use it, but after they realize that no, it's not solving my problem, they will go back. So initial 1 year, 2 year period is very, very critical to keep your eyes, ears close to the ground, hear to the users, get the feedback back, deploy it back into the tool, make the tool more effective. I think that's how the whole transition has to be managed if you want a tool to be really, really successful.
Yeah, some I mean, super tips here, I think, from your experience. Shashwat, anything you want to add to that?
No, I just want to, emphasize one thing that Amit mentioned there, right? I mean, I think defining the objectives, right? So because it's a multi-stakeholder collaborative project, right? Until and unless everybody is on the same page with what the objectives are, right? Of why are we doing this, right? If that is not clear, right, then you will always run into problems, right? Because one team might think, okay, this is the objective from the tool. The other team, because and the hard reality is that because teams are busy, have a lot of work to do, because even as vendors, when we interact with teams, right, it's not as if everybody's sitting in the same meeting all the time, right? You have meetings with different teams at different times, right? Now, if let's say I as an external vendor am meeting different teams and they're telling me different things, right? I am confused as to what to do, right? So, and that's a big challenge, right? I mean, and so having clarity internally, right? So if I'm an enterprise trying to implement a CLM tool, really documenting the key reasons why we're doing this, key objectives of doing it, what all systems does it impact, right? What is the outcome that we're looking from this, right? Having that clarity, well communicated, well accepted by different stakeholders, right, is absolutely important, right? It might take you 1 more quarter, right, to get that done, but that is worthwhile investment as a company that you can do, because it is going to have long-reaching impacts, right? The other thing is that one other challenge that, again, this is that one other thing that we face, right, is another sensitization that leaders within the legal org need to do is they need to sort of also build that sensitization within their team, right? It's a change for them, so a lot of people will react adversely because it's shifted the process in some way, right? So they have to build that understanding that the idea of the tool is even if it is improving your efficiency by 20%, 25%, it is a worthy investment, right? At times we've seen unreal expectations, right? So I have been in rooms where, I know that the function today is run on pen and paper, and they will be like, "Ki hame AI chahiye, an artificial intelligence bot, which will now I will just import the contract and the contract will sign and come out of the other thing." That is the expectation that they will come in, and when you ask them what is the current state of the data, they will have nothing. They don't even know the number of contracts that they have, right? So having realistic expectations from what is possible, right? Measuring those efficiency gains, right? Documenting all of this, right? As if that preparation, a legal function or whatever the team is, which is managing this deployment, does it at their end, right? Then you are really aiding the vendor to help you meet your objectives. Otherwise, the vendor will not know what the objectives are, and they will just keep doing things, right? In one meeting, they will promise something, in another meeting, they will promise something else, right? And then the dashboards will just look out of whack, right? So that is one recommendation that we have to the industry at large, right? That invest in it, right? I mean, it is not, you are not buying a magic bullet, right? It's not that, I take this tool and from tomorrow, your company is going to be on a different trajectory. It's not going to happen, right? I mean, a lot of people know this by experience, but it is just, I mean, I don't know if it's the lack of common sense and whatever it is, right? I mean, so many times we as humans are, wired that way, right? We keep making the same mistakes over and over again, right? And yeah, I mean, that's
I think what's coming out is the fact you've worked with a lot of corporates and a lot of in-house counsel.
I know, and then while I say this, right, I know that I'm not doing myself any service by saying this, right? But see, I mean, we can't hide, we can't push, these are realities, and you can't push it under the carpet anymore, right? I mean, these are complex things, and businesses are not simple, right? No business in the world, right? Even if you run a small tea shop by the corner, it's a complex business to run, right? Trust me. And I mean, that's how we have to pay heed to that, and just have the expectations set in that way.
Yeah.
Ashwath, I have sympathies with your frustration.
Okay. I mean, it's pretty obvious the frustrations that are boiling out.
But when you go into the market, there is no shame in asking for the best. So you try and kind of say that I want a rocket which can take you to the moon. So that's a normal human behavior, right?
Let's first build the automobiles, right? I mean, we're directly wanting spaceships, right? I mean,
that's true. That's true.
Yeah. We've got an interesting point come up from Nagarajan, which might be more Shashwat's one, but he's saying, in my experience, while implementing the GST interface with ERP, it was a challenging environment. Given the new law and frequent changes and the IPA interface, how do you think in such a scenario that CLM kind of tool will help? So is that something you can answer now, or you think it'll take time and you want to have a kind of one-to-one with him?
We can take all the questions at the end, if that's okay.
We've got a few minutes left. Okay, so I'll go back to Amit and then we can deal with that one afterwards. Not to add, but Amit, the big question, what business challenges are yet to be solved by legal tech providers when it comes to contract management? And what more work should Shashwat be focusing on?
I think I've already given him one business idea for sure to make a program which is agile to both bigger and smaller businesses. I think I will still say that the tools are largely still focused on legal problems only, right? And Shashwat will bear with me on this, that when you come and present on a legal CLM tool, the selling point is on how it has drafts inbuilt in it. The selling point is how you can retrieve it. The selling point is how it can talk to all your stakeholders. I'm sure that Shashwat has thought about how it solves larger business problems, right? What is and why my supply chain team should buy your program, or why my finance team should buy my program, right? The selling point has to be for them as well, if we are saying it has to solve a larger business problem. So I go back to my initial point where I started, that it is not a legal tool, it is a business tool. And therefore, possibly from a solution orientation point of view, the service provider has to start talking from a business solution point of view than only legal solution point of view. And Shashwat will largely agree with me that it is still focused, the discussions are focused on legal problems. It does not say that, okay, by the way, your supply chain team also will get XYZ benefit of this. By the way, your finance team will get these benefit because it gives these data points as well. So I think we have to start moving things in that direction. As I said, CLM, if you think about it, it can solve a lot of problems for my businesses, which currently the business faces, and a lot of interface with other parts of the businesses as well, whether it is third parties or external, internal, finance, taxation. There are a lot of stakeholders involved. We can kind of really unpeel, and there's a lot of potential to improve it and take it to the level which I talked about. It becomes equivalent of a SAP, what we call it from accounting. We need a solution which is equivalent of that, which becomes a gold standard of the CLM. We have still to reach that stage, and I'm hopeful with people like Shashwat who are really bring that legal understanding to this whole space. We will be able to reach to that level.
Yeah. Plus, how to get GCs to the edge of space quickly. Using AI, ML, and Google Tech, etc.
I agree with Amit, right? I mean, we have a long way to go, right? I mean, again, I'm taking ProKey's example, right? I mean, we are a 5-year-old company, and first 2 years we did not even know what we were doing, right? I mean, it took us 2 years to even understand, to start seeing the elephant's tail, right? I mean, at this point we can only understand and comprehend what the tail of the elephant looks like, right? Rather than imagining the whole elephant. And so there's a long way to go, and it's a consultative process, right? I mean, when we did the deployment with Hindustan Unilever, we learned so many new things, right? And those benefits now accrue to the new companies that we work with, right? I mean, and that's the beauty of B2B enterprise technology, right? I mean, in a way, this is a socialist system, right, where we end up subsidizing know-how for the entire community, right? I mean, the best practices that one company does eventually find their way into other companies as well over time, right? I mean, you will have that. So there's a long way for us to go there, right? And we are keenly, I mean, one thing that we have is at least we are aware, right, that we know very little. We know that, we're dealing with experts who've been, for instance, Marico, they've built this business over decades, right? They have obviously done what 1,000 other companies who tried to do and failed doing, right? So there is something that has worked, right? So obviously they've done things right? And for us as young people, starting our careers in the industry, is for us the best thing is just to listen to experts and see how to do things, right? If you understand how one successful company is running their processes, then there's a lot of learning for us to take back and think about what are the larger business implications, right? That's been our approach to all of this, right? And I mean, I don't come from legal. One of my co-founders is from legal, but all of what we've learned about the legal space and how GCs think is interacting, working with companies over the last 3-4 years, right? So we're very grateful, and we are trying our best to fulfill those gaps that the legal function faces today, right?
I think just to add to, I think we need that formal platform somewhere. I think it's an important point which Shashwat has raised, that unless you try and understand, what are the real challenges which in-house counsels face and what are the processes around it, you will never be able to provide a solution around it, right? So one of the best, all the tech tools have always been built by people who understood the processes well, and then there was someone who brought that tech expertise to say that, I can solve it in this particular way. Some of our conversations with Shashwat were always in the space of saying, okay, we have solved this particular problem, that can we link these two as well? So I think we need to formalize, Shashwat, some of these conversations where, the in-house community is talking to the tech community to continuously work on this area, because I think it works best for them for us and for people like you to come up with the solutions which are really usable and are solving the real business problems.
No, absolutely. And because this is a new business idea for you, right? I mean, build a community. We desperately lack communities.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we need to build great communities, right? I mean,
yeah. So next month we're gonna have a new initiative that kicks off in terms of content for GC community. It's a newsletter format, but we are working on that as what are we doing for the next 1 year as well for legal. I'm going to wrap up because I can't believe like 1 hour has flown by already. I know.
if you give me a minute, I'll try to try to answer what Nagarajan asked. If we have a minute.
Not a Shashwat minute though.
I don't know if I fully understood your question, Nagarajan, but the way I would look at it, I mean, in my limited understanding, one probable benefit of a CLM tool is with, again, so you talk about GST and the ERP and the API interface, right? I mean, one of the things that CLM tools are trying to do is, if you look at traditionally, contracts have been long text of information, right? One of the key things that CLM tools are also trying to do is also discretize some of this information and data, right, which is codified in the contract, right? So, so making textual information which can then be discretized and consumed through other functions, right? And then you can have programmability on top of it, right? So, for instance, if the tax regulation changes, right, and it is properly codified in your contract of what would be the impact of change in the tax regulation, right? And the CLM system is configured, right, that way, then that change management can be extremely fast, right? Rather than running a 6-month transition process of the old regime to the new regime, right? Those processes, if the CLM, right? Today, the burden of that falls on the finance functions, but again, a lot of it is interpretation of regulation, which is then codified into your contracts. And then if you're able to, codify some of this information in your contracts and discretize it, right? Then I think a lot of benefit can accrue, right? In terms of time savings during transitions, during regulatory changes, right? I don't know if I understood your point or answered it sufficiently, but that was on my take on it.
Yeah, I think what I've said to him as well, that we'll connect you offline as well. So I mean, he said, thank you for clarifying that, but he's also looking forward to the next webinar, which we'll talk about now. But I'll connect you guys offline as well, because there might be an interesting opportunity there for you as well. So I want to thank you, Amit and Shashwat. I was an hour has literally flown by, on a very specific kind of topic around contract management, and it's been a very interactive session, dealing with some of the big questions, and I think some very, very good tips, and practical points that people can take away, both from a vendor point of view as well as the in-house point of view, and I think essentially I love the fact that, Amit, that you're already kind of epitomizing how the GC has evolved in the last 10 or 12 years. Well, like I said, 12 years ago, the concept of GC was fairly non-existent, but the whole kind of move was, we want to be at the table, we want to be taken seriously by business, and the conversation you're having, and then even telling, talking to us saying, we shouldn't only just focus on legal tech tools, these are business tools, but channeling via the legal department, that you're really epitomizing how a GC role has evolved in India, and how that has to happen even more, across other legal departments. And I think it's a great sign that we have kind of legal leaders like you within the community to kind of move the community forward. I want to thank the audience as well, for listening in, and tuning in to a delightful session around a big issue that's impacting legal departments and businesses at the moment. If you want to catch this recording and our other recordings, just go to our IDEX Legal YouTube channel and you'll be able to see this and the other sessions. Next up for us on April the 20th is Shujat bin Ali, General Counsel of Sustainability, and he's going to be joining us to discuss compliance management tools, which I think will be just as interesting as what Amit's been sharing with us. We look forward to having him on board and seeing you all then. Thanks, Amit. Thanks, Shashwat. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Vikas.
Bye-bye.
Bye.